Dude report. All right, so it's been a while. J5 has been gone. He's back in the studio.
Hey.
Did you steal any bikes? Did you get some good ones?
Fantastic.
Very good.
Fat tires.
So we're going to do a little episode now. Kerr County got a lot of flooding this last weekend. There's been a lot of videos about this, and we just want to go dive into the geology about it. I got a great video talking about why this keeps happening in different parts of the country. This keeps happening, and I find it really interesting. And J5 knows a lot about this subject, and he might jump in there and talk about why these rains keep happening to Texas, which is going to be really fascinating. So, J5, you want to go ahead and start rolling the clip?
Let's do it.
So here's before you play it though, I'll blow it up. I want to introduce this guy. He's got a channel, TheGeoModels. So the description: the Kerr County floods are just the latest flash flood disaster this summer in the U.S. With major events in West Virginia a few weeks ago, both of these flash flood occurrences have similarities to the eastern Kentucky flood of 2022, as well as the other flash flood disasters in previous decades. All of these landscapes share a common characteristic that makes them more prone than other landscapes to flash floods. It all comes down to how stream channels are laid out in the landscape, and it's an easy characteristic to see with Google Maps. So he's got the map up and he's talking about it. This video talks about how stream networks layouts, along with other characteristics, can take already major storms and turn them into overnight flood disasters. Now, J5, I don't know if you want to just go into why we're getting the rains. It seems like it was a stalled system that came out.
Yeah, so
tell me about that.
I mean, it's the Edwards Plateau, so it's an uplift from the coastal plain, and we get these moist airs from the Gulf of Mexico, and it pushes up that coastal plain, and when it hits the rise in the land, it condenses those clouds and causes that rainfall on this side of the Balcones Fault. So the Balcones Fault is almost like a Great Divide in a sense. And so it condenses all that moist air from the coast, and it rains down on the edge of that hill country, the Edwards Plateau, and drains back down into the coastal plain. So the hills are carved by this process. It's this process that made the hill country.
Yeah, it seems like before the hill country, it's all flat, and then it's just.
So you would have had a long time ago these ocean sediments that got pushed up by some probably volcanism or something that caused this uplift in the landscape. And the fact that uplift existed started creating this pattern of weather, and the rain and flash flooding literally carved these hills to the way they are. So they are tailor-made to channel that water in the most efficient way possible back down to the coastal plain. It's the literal physics that designed the hills themselves.
What about the rains? These systems that seem to stall out when these happen. It's always some big system. It stalls out.
Part of that stalling is that again, that elevation rise. So it's like this continual push, especially when you have like a tropical depression or something. There's this drawing of all this moist air, and as it gets to that coast, as it gets to that rise in landscape, it condenses and rain falls there. So it just keeps happening when you have that a large depression, and you can just get these sustained rains in this area.
And how many millions of years has been going on, J5?
Ooh, I don't know. Many millions of years. I mean, the marine fossils in here are extremely old in this landscape. So, you know, I don't know.
You can
Johnson.
see it like on the Google map. You can see the flat plateau and then the hill country.
Yeah, so up there at Mountain Home, that is the beginning. Really, up in that area, it's high ground. And if you stood up there, you drive up there and you stand on that flat, you can look and see how the hill country is literally being carved down through these ancient ocean sediments. It's not that hills were pushed up or there's The hills themselves are the remnants of this very flooding activity.
And it's not like the glaciers pushed it in the Ice Age.
No, well,
For the Younger Dryas.
But no, I would assume that
because like the high plains of Texas is super flat. Do they have glaciers coming through there?
No, but I would assume that the end of the last ice age and all the change in ice sheet pushing down on the landscape and the rise of sea levels probably had some effect on the landscape, but I don't know how much. I mean, we've been through many ice ages since this was an ocean. Since these were shallow seas, we've been through glacial and interglacial periods over and over. So there's volcanism, there's all kinds of geological activities that are going to be shifting this landscape around.
I'd like to pull up the video footage from the Ice Age, please.
Yes.
We have any footage?
We'll have to go into the simulation.
Okay. Well, let's let this guy ride. Does he have his name? The actual guy's name?
Maybe he'll introduce himself. Let's see
the GeoModels. Maybe he introduces himself. All right, let's let it ride.
What's happening, folks? Geologist Philip Prince going to talk about flash floods today. It's been a big thing in the news this summer throughout the country. Most recently, of course, here in Kerr County, Texas, and downstream on the Guadalupe River. Believe it or not, just looking at the landscape that you see right now, from a geologic perspective, if you see a landscape that looks like this one, you sort of automatically know that it's prone to extreme flash flooding. I've heard about the Guadalupe River rising 25 feet or something like that in just a matter of hours, literally sort of walls of water coming down the river channel. That sort of thing does happen, but it does require certain background characteristics. I'm actually going to compare this to what happened up in West Virginia earlier this summer, and also what happened in Eastern Kentucky back in 2022, because all of these landscapes, like the one you see here, have sort of a common characteristic. And in particular, I think I'm drawing here the South Fork of the Guadalupe. So the river there is moving into a wider valley once you get down towards Comfort and places like that. But the areas of the landscape that are feeding that river water, so all of these little feeder streams, tributaries coming in, if you really look close, they branch, and then they go up here and branch again and again and again. So it becomes a really sort of intensely carved up landscape, and the term for that geologically is high drainage density. And high drainage density landscapes like this one are notoriously prone to really, really fast flood responses. So they're prone to producing what we would call flash type flooding. If you put the amount of rain that this landscape received on any landscape, you're talking 12 inches, 15 inches, something like that, in just a few hours overnight, you're going to have a flood problem. But it's the rate of that flooding. How fast does it happen? Where are you? Can you recognize that it's happening? And can you have a safe escape route? Speed is really the question. And as we zoom in closer here, as you're seeing a landscape like this, it's actually really sort of almost kind of wrinkled and complex looking when you get close to it. A landscape like this takes precipitation and puts it in channels and runs it into bigger channels very, very quickly. Now, in the particular case of this part of Texas, they were in a drought here, I believe, prior to the event, and the ground surface was sort of hard and baked. So the rainfall that went onto it ran off even faster. And again, as a geologist, if you see a place like this,
pause that.
What's on your mind is actually a number of things.
I always thought that if it got saturated is when it would happen.
It's
not
both.
Hard. It's both?
Yeah, so with the right amount of moisture, the hardness of the clays and the things at the ground, like in the areas where there are deep soils, if the clays are soft because they've had a little bit of moisture, they will readily soak up a lot more water. But if they're extremely dry, they act like just a pan, and the water runs right off of it, especially when it's intense rainfall like this. Like, it doesn't have the time. You know how long it takes a dry ball of clay to soak up water? A long time.
But I thought that I thought that we had a little bit of rain.
This is where I disagree with some of the analysis, because there's like, well, they've been in a drought for so long, everything was so dry, and actually we've been getting quite a bit of rain this year. So I think a bit to the contrary, that our clays were actually fully saturated at this time, at this particular time.
So but I like your point. You don't want it hard and baked, and you don't want it saturated.
That's right.
You need it right in the middle to soak it up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all. That's what I heard that, and I was like, wait a minute. Okay, let's let him go. I like his mustache.
But, yeah, he's got a fine mustache there.
He's got a great mustache.
Another aspect of this is just that there's just not very much topsoil on these hills. It's and then we have the cedars that have killed so many of the native grasses, and that also prevents absorption of water, and we get all this runoff because of the cedar trees that have killed all the native grasses and dropped their cedar needles everywhere. That just creates more runoff. Okay.
Take a look at here, but one is the very rapid response of it to rainfall. Now, what produces a landscape like this? It tends to be like flat-lying layers of rock. And we got this pulled up here on the national map. We're looking here at LiDAR imagery just south of Hunt, Texas. And if we zoom in here, you can actually see these rock layers poking out here on the hillsides, and very, very closely spaced stream channels there, all of which are funneling water into bigger streams, which go down here into the South Fork of the Guadalupe River. What you're seeing there with the LiDAR imagery, which is kind of these parallel lines, sort of individual rock layers, it looks like they're pretty thin. If you were standing there and walking up that hill, you would be crossing a lot of thin layers. And frequently having thin layers or having rock that can come apart into small pieces is one geologic factor that goes into producing this really, really high drainage density. And also having the layers being essentially flat lying, so that there's not any particular directionality to the river systems. They sort of spread equally in all directions. That's another factor that tends to produce the very high drainage density effect that you have in the landscape here, that's so good at putting water into streams very quickly. We'll see if we can get the 3D viewer to load up here on the national map. Sort of an exciting detail about the National Map Service here from the U.S. Geological Survey is that as of very recently, you can actually access this 3D LiDAR data for much of the country. And it's a very valuable resource if you're just interested in looking at sort of the details of the landscape, or what the landscape looks like. And what you're seeing right here is a landscape that is going to be prone to producing stream networks like this, and with stream networks like that, in a hot climate that can dry the land surface, it's going to be an absolute flash flood making machine. So when it comes to the idea of this happening fast, sort of faster than you can respond to, particularly when it's in the dark, it's overnight, it's in the wee hours of the morning in particular, so you've probably already been asleep for a while, it presents an extremely dangerous situation. And this is something that we see in a variety of locations in the United States, and the vast majority of them actually have the background geologic characteristics that we just talked about here, which are flat-lying sedimentary geology. Frequently there's thin rock layering involved with that, and there's often, not always, but often a pretty significant clay component in the soil that comes from the rock, because there's rock types like shale that themselves are already thinly layered, and they produce clays in the soil. So there actually is a reason that a landscape like this is going to be very much poised to produce flash flooding, regardless of what the weather conditions or climate conditions have been in the months or years before the event. And as I already said, you put a foot of rain on a place, expect to see, a catastrophic outcome. But a landscape that's set up like the one you're looking at here, as we saw yesterday, and this situation is still unfolding. Hopefully there's going to be rescues. There's still people missing here. I don't know, how long those efforts will continue before they direct more towards what you would think of as type of recovery type of situation. And frequently a flood in a landscape like this that's been dry has a tremendous amount of debris in it, because woody debris will collect in the channels during the dry periods when there's no water to carry it away. And you get a big punch of rain like this, and not only do you have flood waters, they're absolutely choked with woody debris from trees, and then more materials accumulated from structures that wash away, and it ends up becoming more than just a very fast moving water flood. So bearing all this in mind, this is the most recent of these events, but it was just a few weeks ago that you were seeing events similar to this in West Virginia almost day to day. They just had weather conditions in place that were causing thunderstorms to drop several inches of rain in one place very quickly, and it was producing flash flooding that was comparable. This is more severe probably because of that sort of baked condition of the ground that made the runoff even more extreme. The rainfall totals here in Texas are probably greater, but the rainfall rates in West Virginia would have been very similar to what you see here, and of course with equally catastrophic outcomes. So if you were to go onto Google Maps and just take screenshots of landscapes in West Virginia or in Kentucky or in the hill country of Texas, you would note pretty quickly that they have sort of a similar sort of grain or character. I'll need to move the window here just a little bit.
You can see that,
zoom this back out. But up there in the top right, you got eastern Kentucky. So that was an area that flooded very severely back in 2022. Over on the right side of the screen there, got the Fairmont, West Virginia area, got the Wheeling area here on the left, with Wheeling itself over there against the Ohio River, and then up in the top left you've got Kerr County, Texas. So the West Virginia and Kentucky examples, they need to use a better color. They have very, very similar topography because the background geology there is almost exactly the same. This is sandstone and shale of the Appalachian Plateau. What you deal with there in the Texas Hill Country, flat-lying layers, I think there's a considerable limestone presence there. I am by no means any kind of expert on the background geology other than the structural characteristics that you can see that contribute to that elevated drainage density. And all of these images are taken at the same scale. So the style of landscape is similar, but the actual physical size of the stream channels is different between these locations because they are different geologies in terms of rock type, and they do have very different climates as well. So let's clear out those drawings there. We'll actually zoom in here just a little bit to the top left. And even though the physical scale of the drainages there in Texas is different, you can see in some areas, particularly like the ones in the middle of the screen right there, that a small stream kind of going up the hill will have 6 or 8 or 10 small branches going off of it. A branch of a stream there might just be several hundred feet, 1,000 feet long or something like that. But essentially all parts of the landscape are sloped. And when they're sloped pretty steeply, they go straight to a channel, and you've got that hard-baked surface. Even though the elevation and the topography there is a little bit lower than what you see in Kentucky and West Virginia, you're going to be looking at a similar type of a flood response. So absolutely there is a connection between landscape style and how a landscape is going to act if you put a tremendous amount of precipitation on it. And to kind of lay this out in sort of a comparison kind of thing.
That last picture
of one
that he was showing of the Guadalupe, you can see the topography. It's very flat around the river. It looks like there was an even bigger, like multiple thousands and thousands of years floods on there. If you look at it, you're like, holy shit! Like it's carved its way through the hill country.
That's what I'm saying.
You can see that
the entire landscape has been carved by this exact process.
This river has ripped through the hill country and essentially laid. It looks like when you look at it, it looks like, holy shit! All of Kerrville, Ingram and Kerrville, and going down is all just flattened out.
And they're when you dig
that's
down
why they're
there,
like,
you hit river sediments.
That's why you're building there. It's all this flat land, but it looks like thousands of years of these types of floods ripping through there and just leveling the place. Because if you look at the West Virginia, the Kentucky ones, it's not, I mean, they got their valleys, but you look at Kerr County, you're like, holy shit. Yeah, if you back it up. I mean, look at that. You see that?
Yeah.
Look how flatten it out. And when you go south.
At some point, all this was river. Right? Like
yeah, right where right where Kerrville is, if you look on this map, you're like, that was the river. They are actually on a much bigger river.
Yeah, and
holy shit. I never noticed that until I looked at that map.
Oh yeah.
So this last flood, it looks like a baby.
The cliffs.
Yeah, it looks like a baby flood compared to something that happened long ago, man.
Or many times.
Or just many times.
Yeah.
I mean,
over
Jesus.
Thousands of years.
You can see on the other parts of the United States, it's nothing like. Wow.
But dude, think about these midden mounds. Some of them are buried under, 10 feet of sediment, and there's midden down there. People were living on a different.
Are we talking arrowheads now?
I'm just talking about the Indians that lived in these areas. Like their campsites are buried in some cases in tens of feet of material. How do you think that material got there?
Yeah, it's just kind of scary to look at, because then when you look at this, you're like, shit, you could have a much even bigger flood than the one that we already had. Potentially.
And there have been many times.
If you got 24 inches, and let's say it never stopped at 12 and it went to 24, I could see Kerrville obliterated.
Yes.
And every single town on the Guadalupe River absolutely obliterated. Yeah. It just.
And my point in bringing up the Native American populations is that it's happened probably hundreds of times and destroyed every single settlement that was along that river and buried it in tens of feet of gravel and silt.
Oh my God. Dude, their other valleys don't even compare.
Yeah, they're I think what he's trying to point out here is this it's scale invariance. Like, even though this is at a larger scale, it doesn't matter. Like the effect is the same. But yeah, I see what you're saying. Their river valleys are not nearly as wide.
Dude, it's not even close how wide the river valley is in Kerr County.
But these are so much taller, and they may be a different rock type, so they don't. Who knows? I mean, that would just mean that these floods at the same scale would be faster moving water and deeper.
Another thing that's crazy is you look at Camp Mystic on the South Fork, like, holy shit. Like it's at the bottom of the fork and it got wiped out.
Yes. But it's also at the base of two other tributaries.
Oh, really? So, okay. Maybe we have to. I like this website that he's got going on. Well, do you remember where we were?
Yeah, the USGS is fantastic.
I didn't know he had that LiDAR.
Yeah, there's all kinds of layers you can put on that USGS map.
Okay, let it roll. I'm gonna go get a beer.
One valley set that's going to be really steep and tight there on the left, and sort of a broader, more rolling one there on the right. So let's make two different style landscapes here. So the one that I'm drawing right now on the right, for geologic reasons, it's going to have a fairly low drainage density. So it's going to have rock types and soil types that favor the development of a smaller number of kind of larger stream channels on the surface. And then over here on the left, we're going to set ourselves up with something like we're seeing in these high drainage density landscapes, where one big stream here is going to have sort of a countless number of little
creeks,
forks and branches coming off of it, such that literally all parts of the landscape are either a channel or a steep slope. And you can take this in all directions. You sort of want the forks to have their own forks, and then those smaller forks have their own forks, and so on and so forth, until there's actually a tremendous amount of stream mileage in this landscape. I'm going to finish the one on the left there up. Going to run it in fast forward here just to keep things on pace. But when it's all said and done, we'll actually draw blue lines. We'll actually draw streamlines on this, just so you can get a sense of how all this would compare. And absolutely, this exercise is something that geologists do when they're studying flooding. Geology and weather interact quite a bit. Geology can produce weather in terms of how mountain ranges are set up, and weather also interacts with geology in terms of how the landscape looks and how water runs off the landscape to carry sediment away. So the two disciplines don't always overlap as much as they should, but they absolutely have a great deal in common, and there's a tremendous amount of interplay between the geologic characteristics like we're looking at here and more immediate sort of short-term weather effects like we've been seeing this summer. So we'll get this rolling here. Bear with me, and we'll talk about what the stream networks actually look like. So hang on just a minute.
He's doing a pretty good job drawing it out.
That's awesome.
Must be like using like a iPad and it's streaming from or something. There's no way he's doing it with his finger.
Okay, so two vastly different landscapes here. We were to draw out a stream network on this one, sort of a limited number of possibilities here. And again, this is going to be an expression actually of what's under the ground there, what kind of soil it makes, how easily the rock is eroded, how easily precipitation can soak into the soil derived from the rock, all kinds of questions. In our high drainage density landscape here, we're about to be drawing for quite a while, because
I mean, you draw it out like that, you're just like
quantity of channel length in this landscape is
I'm looking
just
at
really
this.
exceptional.
And I'm looking at this, bro, and he's drawing it out. I'm like, okay, you're fucked. This is all you got to do. Just look at this, right? No one, that river doesn't stand a chance. No one there stands a chance. Not with that, comparing the two rivers. You're screwed. They all just come and hit and just boom. I wonder what's like. It rose up so fast. Was it like 27 feet?
So another one of the principles is that, like, you think about when you channel water, it moves faster. When water spreads out and gets shallower, it moves slower.
Yeah.
So, like we were looking at in Kerrville on the Guadalupe, in that big wide area, and you go up into the fork, and the fork is really narrow, the water in that fork is deep and highly channeled, and it's moving at an incredible rate, because it's the same amount of water that when it finally gets into Kerrville, it spreads all the way out in that wide stream valley. And so you still have, if you were to measure the amount of water that's passing any one point in the valley, when you have a wide valley, it's the same amount of water, but it's spread out over this wide distance, and it's moving slower and it's shallower. Then you go up into the stream channel and you have a much shorter line when you're measuring across that channel, but it's the same amount of water moving through it as that wide channel. So now it's deep and it's extremely accelerated.
So the reason why
it's more destructive.
And it's coming down off those creeks, are coming down those hills, off the slope. So you think that it's picking up so much speed, and that's why it just hauled ass.
It just completely destroyed. It rips up everything. It has so much more force in a much smaller area.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's so much more.
I mean, you look at it versus other flooding. It's going so fast.
It's going incredibly fast.
Looks like 40, 60 miles an hour, but I couldn't tell you how fast it was going.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'd have to look up all that data. But, all right. Yeah, let him roll. He's doing good.
Totally different ball game from what we got there on the right. And if you can imagine, if a raindrop falls in the area that I'm drawing right now, really regardless of where it falls, it's going to fall on a steeply sloping part of the landscape. And it's immediately going to be in a channel, making its way downhill towards another stream channel, which is going to be met by even more runoff, and you can kind of take it. You can kind of take it from there. So a landscape like the one we just filled in there, that's going to flood hard and fast, regardless. You could, in fact, take the same storm and sit it over top of everything I just drew right there. And the flood that you're going to get on the right side of the screen there is going to still move a huge amount of runoff, but it's not going to do it as quickly and as violently as the one on the left there. And to take this a step further, frequently in these high drainage density landscapes, the channels are really cut down into the land like you see here, and that leaves people sort of living along the rivers. They tend to be really cool, pretty rivers. A lot of times they're rocky, they have kind of bluffs or cliffs along the side of them. So they're appealing places to be. The problem with that is that you're of course in harm's way very much if there is a big flood event. Your choices for living in a landscape like this are either kind of up here along the hilltops, which is something that you see around Wheeling in particular, or down here in the valleys where the flood risk is quite extreme. Most of the kind of the sloped areas like this are just they're too steep to really use for anything in terms of building or something like that. So yes, geology and its expression in the landscape absolutely dictates how the landscape is going to respond to weather. What I drew in there is just that idea of the flat-lying layering that's going to give you a scenario like the one illustrated there. And we would have to have some kind of big geologic boundary here, and on this other side we might have metamorphic rocks over here that are intensely folded. Their mineral content's really different, and they just make an entirely different landscape, right? So when you see a pattern like the one on the left there, which of course is the type of pattern that you see here in Kerr County in Texas, even really zoomed out like this, you see it again, making your way back over here into the Appalachian Plateau. It's really at its most extreme globally here in eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. I've said it in other videos, I promise you there are landscapes similar to this. There is really not anything quite like this anywhere on planet Earth. It's almost dizzying to look at. Of course, traveling in a landscape like this is challenging, but with all of that slope there and that many stream channels, this one's built to flash flood.
Looks like a lot more high
like
elevation than the hill country though. Like looking at this, does he have? I don't know if you can see no, it doesn't show you the elevation, but I mean, you look at this, it's just like
it's
steep.
It's much more dynamic. Yeah,
way more dynamic.
They're just bigger. It's a bigger pattern.
Yeah, but they definitely don't have that freaking plowed out Guadalupe River going through it.
Yeah.
Further north, up in Wheeling, or to the southeast of Wheeling in Fairmont, where there was a building collapse related to the flooding that got a lot of coverage over the past several weeks as well. So this is this is not something maybe that you think about every day. You're probably not going to see it expressed this way in news broadcasts. There is mention of the hard baked ground for sure in Texas, but this idea of high drainage density, like how many stream channels are there in the land to take falling precipitation and put it in a bigger channel really fast. That high drainage density, along with other details like how the stream networks branch and things like that, these all impact how the landscape floods. But you can be sure that it's not at all a coincidence that so many of these big flash flood stories from the past few years, and just from this summer alone, are happening in landscapes that actually look very similar, even though they're in different.
Look at that.
Where at?
Moundsville. See that big
Moundsville.
flat?
Where's this at?
Yeah. See that big flat area right there in the river?
Wheeling? Yeah.
There's mounds there.
Well, it's called Moundsville. The town's
Yeah.
called Moundsville.
Yeah, I'm. Why do you think it's named that?
There's a lot of candy bars there. That's why.
Yeah.
Dipshit.
I'm just saying.
Are you trying to say
There-
there's Indian mounds there?
Yeah,
In
in other words,
Moundsville?
people were living there thousands of years ago in this nice little spot that the massive floods completely carved out of that landscape. But the river is just right here.
Yeah, you can see
So
it right
they're-
there.
Yeah, so they were living there, and at some point, once again, that river probably came down and filled that thing up, and those people are gone, bro.
And the mounds. You gotta dig them all up. I didn't know you were interested
they're
in
in different-
hunting arrowheads, J5. I thought you were more into late night
I'm into
hunting
the
for bikes.
indigenous people.
different parts of the country.
You like stealing
We
bikes.
can
Like,
probably take ourselves up here with the
We should
with
pull
the
up this
national map. This
USGS
is an
after this.
incredible tool.
let's pull up the USGS after this. You should load it up on the side, because I like to kind of explore the Guadalupe real fast. Look at that South Fork. He's actually zoomed in. Okay, I can see. Hey, what was that?
Let's play it.
All right, let's play it.
To be able to see LiDAR like this sort of on demand, I'll tell you what, it's and to see it in 3D that in the way that you now can, it's really something else. Honestly, we'll let this fly us up to Wheeling real fast.
Where's Wheeling? Is that oh, it's
All
West
right,
Virginia.
Here we go. And if we zoom in on this landscape,
It's a beautiful country.
actually be able to see some characteristics that are going to look a fair bit like what you saw there in Texas. And you have to take it a step further to get the. There we go. So that's the full high quality 1 meter scale LiDAR right there, and right away you see that same sort of layered texture. Doesn't look unlike what you have down there in Texas. And yes, there's a good reason that you're seeing that, that similarity between these events. I would be interested to know, and I don't know this, I'd be interested to know how much details like what I've talked about here, drainage density, the way stream networks are laid out, the nature of soil. I'd be interested to know how that factors into flood modeling in landscapes like this. Obviously, you want to look at flood history. You want to look at how river gauges behave with a given rain event. But certainly, landscapes like this absolutely have a different behavior, a different tendency than the one I'm in, for example, in the Appalachian Piedmont. We don't have anything like this topographically. We don't have geology like this.
He's in the
And
Appalachians.
if we were to catch a rain event like the one we're talking about here, you would see tremendous flooding, but you would not see the human toll, and you would not see the level of damage from it, for reasons of how the land is used, how the land is developed, and the simple fact that you're going to have a little bit more time to to warn people and to actually get people out of harm's way. So hope this video was useful. Talked a lot about weather and geology with Helene, of course, and just like weather interacting with topography, forcing extreme rainfall in certain locations, certain geologic scenarios being more prone to landsliding, for example. Certain geologic scenarios, like the one we're looking at here, are absolutely different in terms of their flood behavior. And we've seen a lot of that. And as long as you have these convective thunderstorms that produce rainfall at inches per hour, you always run the risk of seeing it again. And even if it's coming, it's likely to happen fast enough that getting out of harm's way, particularly if it's at night, is going to be extremely challenging. So I hope this video was useful to you, and I hope you check out the next one when it comes along.
Yeah, it was a good video. Couple disagreements, like we've been getting rain, so it wasn't hard. I mean, last summer, shit, I think Texas definitely had very hard topsoil.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it could be a factor still, but I think it was saturated. But still, there's just not very much of it. So even if it is ready to absorb, it's still not going to absorb that much water.
Sure.
So I got the map viewer up, but I don't know how to get it into this 3D thing that he did.
Oh yeah? See if you can share it. Hey dudes. Alright, we're going to split this video up. Stay tuned for part 2. I'm going to post that as well. I don't want to make too long of videos. So part 2, J5 and me explore the USGS map and really go into deep detail and look at these rivers and where they go, and we follow the Guadalupe all the way down. Check it out. And I do have in the description or comments, I'm going to put in the charities to donate to. So got some really good charities, so check them out. I did some research and found some good ones that where your buck goes a long mile. Not like at the old gas station where you don't know where it's going. Would you like to donate? I don't know. Where's it going? What's the cut here? So check it out. Stay gay.
Report.